the tale of Volkh Vseslavyevich. Who would tell us of the things that are old, of the things that have been? This is a tale of heroes taking place in the fabled lands ruled by Volodymyr Brightson, Knyaz, or Prince of all the Rus, who held throne in old and mighty Kyiv. This is a tale of the Elder Bogatyr Volkh Vseslavyevich, or Vol'ga Sviatoslavich, he goes by many names, was not as other Bogatyri of ancient Rus after the coming of the Christians. He was both Bogatyr and Volkhiv, or wizard, sorcerer of Kyiv, a shapeshifter with the cunning of his serpent father, and the legends say that he was able to transform his shape at will. But we must first begin this tale with his mother, Marfa Vseslavna, a princess and a daughter of Kyiv, a niece of the Red Sun. The young princess, the young Marfa, was strolling through a garden rich with flowers and grasses. Jumping from a rock, she landed atop a fierce serpent who lay there. He coiled himself around her, entangling her legs and lashing out with his tail. The sky glowed. There was an earthquake. The waters of the blue sea were troubled, and the fish swam deep to hide, and birds flew as high as they could into the sky, hailing the birth of a great one. For at that moment, Marfa realized that she was with child. At his birth, Volk had a caul, a veil of birth membrane, on his head, and the Volkhivs, or sorcerers, saw this as a sign and told his mother that this should be bound to his head for the rest of his life, because this would bring him good luck. Within an hour and a half, he was speaking. By the age of 3, he was reading and writing. By the age of 10, he could turn himself into a bright-eyed falcon, or a gray wolf, or a wild ox with golden horns. When he was fishing for sturgeon, he turned himself into a pike. However, by daylight, he was a warrior and a chief of a tribe. When he attained 12 years, he gathered a bodyguard together, a druzhina, of 30 heroes less one. He was to be the 30th. And he instructed them, go, weave nets, cast them upon the ground, and catch as many animals, as much wildlife as you can. His druzhina faithfully did this, but were unable to meet what was set before them. Volk turned himself into a wolf and chased the animals into the net. Again, he tasked his druzhina to do something for him, to weave nets and hang them in the trees, and then chase the birds, the swans, and the geese and the ducks into the trees. They did as he bid them do, but again, his druzhina failed miserably, not catching anything. Volk turned himself into a falcon and showed them how it was done, and the nets were filled. He then tasked his druzhina to weave nets and cast them into the waters and catch as many fish as they could. And this they did, except they did not catch any fish. Volk transformed himself into a pike and chased the fish into a net. It might be time to get a new druzhina. When he was 15, he had gathered together a host of 7,000 warriors, and at the head of this army, Volkh Vseslavyevich threw down a challenge. It is here that the Guzlari, or the Skomoroki, the bards, the storytellers, they bicker, they differ. Some would say that the challenge was directed at King Celtic of India, not the India that we know, but the India of fable, and that he sought to capture proud Kyiv and set fire to the holy churches and monasteries. Others claim that it was not the King of India, but the Sultan of the Turks who would have waged this unjust war upon the land of the Rus and seek to dim Red Sun Volodymyr. Yet others claim it was neither the King of India nor the Sultan of the Turks, but the great Khan of the Tatars, who sought to ravage the Rus and make slaves of them. We shall agree with the Skomoroki that the threat came from the Tatars, and here is how it happened. The Golden Horde, staying in the frosty Caucasus, was going to invade the Rus lands, and these tidings reached Kyiv. The wizard Volk gathered his warriors in council, but none of them had the courage to go to spy upon the lands of their enemy. Volk laughed and disappeared at the very moment. In his place stood a ram with golden horns, who instantly leaped a single verst away, and by the second he was out of sight. Others say a wolf appeared, which turned and rushed away, like a wolf across the path of the great god Horus. Long days and nights through rains and winds, the beast was running to the enemy territory. At last he got the mountains and stood on the ridge, observing the vast plain open to all the winds. There, near the Khan's camp, Tatar warders marched, and no enemy was able to get in there until this moment. After an hour, a bird with a red tuft sat on the Khan's marquee. The bird sat still and listened to a man and a woman talking. The Khan was telling his wife about his plans of sharing rich Rus lands amongst his sons. The woman exclaimed, "I saw a dream. Two birds were fighting, and the little northern bird killed the southern crow. That little bird was Wizard Volk. Don't raise your sword against him." But the Khan told her off for such dreams. The bird spread its wings and flew away. Then Lord Volk transformed himself into a little ermine and crept into the armory. Amongst the weapons, he resumed his form as a man, and he snapped stout bows, and he broke bowstrings of silk and broke arrows. And while the guards were trying to figure out what was happening, what was amiss in the armory, the youth transformed again into a little ermine, crept away. Soon the guards were hearing the death rattle of horses and the snarl of a wolf. And when they went to see the horses, they were all dead, and a wolf had padded away. Then they heard the flapping of a falcon's wings headed north. And it was here when they discovered that they had no weapons and they had no horses. The Tatar army lost heart. But this was not enough. Volk returned to Kyiv, to his druzhina of 29, to his host of 7,000, and he led them south. And when they arrived at the Tatar camp, the warders, the guards, did not see anything except thousands of ants going under the gate. But these were Volk's soldiers. Inside the gate, the ants transformed into armed Rus warriors who took down the Tatars. And now they sought to divide the spoils. What was the value of the spoils? Sharp swords were rated at 5 hryvnia, weapons of damask steel at 6 hryvnia, and but one lot was exceedingly cheap: the women. Old women were valued at 1/4 of a razana, young women at half a razana, beauties at a copper veska. He took captive the wife of the Khan and made her his bride, while his warriors married 7,000 beautiful maidens, and settled in that land. It was at the feast I heard this tale. There it was I drank mead ale. Though it flowed down my beard, my mouth remained dry, for never a drop passed my lips, swear I.